Next chunk is going to be about history of the fur trade because that's important before I go into treaties. I'm taking a course through Coursera. It is free. You can take it. It's Indigenous Canada. It's through University of Alberta. I will put the link in the caption as well in the comments. So if you want to take it with or go a little bit more in depth than I'm going to be, because again, I'm summarizing. So Indigenous people have been on North America for 40,000 years. It's estimate prior to contact there was 1.2 to 2.6 million Indigenous people. There is a creation story. They go into it in the course. I'm not going to summarize it because I feel like I would butcher it. But basically, if you hear someone referring to Turtle Island, that is in reference to North America. Indigenous have a really big, the philosophy of Indigenous people is interconnectedness and belonging. To the land, to the people, and it's just this big sense of this land is borrowed from future generations. It's not ours. We do not own it. We are simply guests and here to take care of it and respect it. So there's the Inuit. The Inuit had 4 regions and they had 4 principles. The first one is work for the common good. 2, respect all living things. 3, preserve harmony and balance. And 4, plan and prepare for the future. The largest group, Nahiawak, which was in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, and parts of the US. A largely mobile culture, so they moved around a lot, and when they would come across each other, if you were wondering if you were related to someone, you would say a phrase that I can't pronounce, but you basically, where are you from? But it actually meant like, because languages, in different ways that you say things mean different things, and Indigenous language actually, a lot of the times when they say something, it's not as simplistic as English. But basically it's like your belly button, like who are you from? Like what belly button are you from? Where's your belly button from? Who is your family? The Mohawk Nation is interesting because they had a matrilineal clan system. They lived in long houses and it was a lot of women living together, and there was a collaboration between men and women. It wasn't like men were up here because they were chiefs. It was the women would actually decide. They would make the decision, especially elders would make the decision on who was going to be chief. And this allowed a harmony between men and women on the direction of the people. So there was kingship ties before. So that would be like people, daughter over here goes with that son over there. And these ties allowed an open trading network. So my handy dandy map. Basically, like all of this was trading networks prior to anyone ever setting foot on North America that wasn't from here. They would trade copper, they would trade shells, obsidian, flints. They had the grease trail, which was about, I believe, fish oil. And then would trade things like corn for fur and meat. Depending on where you were located, if you had an excess of something, you could give that to other people and they would give you the excess of what they had. In Indigenous culture, the more you give, the more that you share and the more generous you are, the higher you are regarded. This is why I've said before, if Indigenous people were going to be any sort of political affiliation, they'd most likely be socialist, which is why capitalistic culture is not a fan of that. But it's important to understand that going into the fur trade and talking about the fur trade, which is how settlers and Indigenous people really worked, they initially were working together. It was a collaboration because again, Indigenous people came in with this history of giving, sharing, helping, and so that's kind of how they first worked together in the fur trade, which is important moving forward. Okay, it's believed that Norse landed first in Newfoundland. They landed, eventually they started clashing with the Indigenous there and they left. They were driven off the land. So the discovery of Canada, which was by English and French. Giovanni Caboto, 1497, Jacques Cartier, 1534. He was the first to set up a colony, and then Martin Frobisher in 1576. Jacques Cartier was kind of a dick. So he landed in Stadacona, Chief Donnacona, and erected a cross, "Long live the King of France." The chief was like, "Why are you putting that there?" And he was like, "We just need it for directions." And then Cartier kidnapped his 2 sons, which once again, Indigenous culture, it's very much, if you need something, we will help each other. So it turns out if he had just said, "Hey, can your sons come with me to guide me?" He would have been like, "Yeah, just leave 2 of your men and you can take 2 of my men," kind of thing. But he didn't do that. He decided to kidnap. And then he returned them and kidnapped the chief and 6 to 10 others. That was in 1534, and the chief died in 1539. By the time that they returned, a new chief had been elected and they had already moved because, again, Indigenous people were very mobile. In 1541, the goal was colonization. They set up a settlement, but they disbanded it and returned to France in 1543. So they lasted 2 years. Champlain in 1603 first made contact with the Inuit. Then in 1608, he founded Quebec City. The fur trade lasted 250 years. And at first it started off really, really good. And that's because the people who landed on the shores wanted beaver pelts. Because I didn't even know this, beaver pelts are how you make felt. That's how they were making felt. I knew they used it to make hats. I didn't realize, I was young when I learned this first, felts. So basically the beaver pelt is double, long fur, short fur, double coated. And Indigenous people would put it like fur side in, and then the long coat over time would wear down and you would just be left with like the soft undercoat. And that's what Europeans wanted. So Indigenous would give Europeans their used coats, and Indigenous got their technology. Technology being like metal and like pots and pans, knives, things of that nature. Because again, Indigenous people had copper, but copper is too soft of a metal. It breaks too easily to use in any meaningful way when it comes to like tools. So we're gonna jump into the fur trade in the next video, but the fur trade was marked by 3 distinctive phases. One was agency. So that was like when they started trading used pelts for goods. That was when the Indigenous people felt like good. It was good. It was good for both of them. Neither one was really being taken advantage of. Then there was dependency, because they came to depend upon that technology, that metal, and the only way they could get it was through the settlers. Then eventually, obviously, the negative aspects started to overcome the benefits.